Hi, I'm Coral Korrupt from Fort Lauderdale, and I'm creating this video tutorial to give tips to DOMs that are just brand new, starting out in the scene or new to the scene. They need some advice on how to start out. And there's been some speculation about one of the remarks that I made about how, hardcore, serious players are not going to want to serve a dominatrix that is, just kind of sitting around in her bra and underwear, stockings, and a pair of heels in a dungeon. Now, this does not go for cam girls. Cam girls can pretty much get away with wearing bra and panties and stuff like that because that's kind of part of the whole gig. So if you're primarily a cam dom, you can play with a bunch of different looks and actually base your whole business around wearing not much more than a bra and panties and get away with it. But when you're in a dungeon and you're doing sessions real time live, your best bet is to invest in your appearance. And I know you're thinking, what the fuck is this girl talking about? She's sitting around wearing a 1970s palazzo jumpsuit and telling me I need to invest in my appearance. Guess what, honey? I have news for you. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not in session right now, and the only thing I need to be concerned about is not looking like a hot mess. But anyway, and some people say, like, well, I'm just starting out, I haven't been making a lot of money, and yada yada, I can't really afford those things. Actually, you can. When I first started out, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had, in my head, I was this great dom. But in reality, it didn't quite match up. I didn't quite know what I was doing, and honestly, looking back at that time, I look at the clothes that I was wearing, and I'm like, oh, God, what was I thinking? I didn't even know how to be sexy. I didn't even know how to learn how to walk in heels. I didn't even know how to walk in heels until I became a dominatrix, so I was lumbering around like a freaking ape, wearing high heels in my underwear and a bra. And, you gotta kind of prioritize. And, it's like you can afford that one piece of clothing. You can afford those hot shoes. And by hot shoes, I don't mean the kind of heels that you can wear to a strip club. Let's be real here for a second. And some doms are like, well, I don't want that, hardcore appearance. I, identify more as like a sensual dom, dom next door. But I have news for you. Men can go to a strip club and get a sensual tease and denial session, even be lightly humiliated, and even kicked in the balls and worship feet at a strip club for a hell of a lot less than what you're charging, honey, so remember that. We are marketing ourselves to be different than a stripper. We offer something that's different than a strip club or an escort or whatever. We offer a different experience. When you kind of make yourself too similar, you're going to find yourself coming up short. So if you want to maintain that, stripper appearance, then you're best kept in the strip club, you know what I mean? And I'm not insulting strippers, but when you're a dominatrix, you're dominating men, like they want that dungeon experience. They want that experience of a powerful woman. And if you have trouble, like, oh, I don't want to look too hardcore, your best bet is to have images of yourself in a variety of attire, both, the sensual lace and yada yada and the nylons and stuff like that, and then, some with latex, some with leather, some with PVC. So back to the point that I was making where you have to invest in your appearance. What I first started doing, since I wasn't making a whole lot of money as a professional dominatrix when I first started out, I was a nobody, and quite frankly, I had kind of an extreme appearance, and it wasn't extreme as in like tough dominatrix extreme. It was kind of like shaved head and nose piercing extreme. So besides the point, what I did was instead of spending my money on this or this that I didn't need, Once a month, once every 2 months, I would buy an article of clothing. The first article of clothing that I bought was PVC. You know, like back when I first started out, they actually made some really nice PVC pieces, not so much anymore, but I still got some PVC. One of the other first things that I bought was a pair of thigh-high stiletto platform PVC boots. Those can move mountains, trust me on that one. You get a hot pair of boots and you could almost take over the world. You know, so I started out with a PVC bra, PVC underwear, PVC skirt, PVC dress. You know, I kind of started with that. There's not a lot of options in regards to PVC now, but there was back in the early 2000s and whatever. You can still purchase inexpensive items that are leather or latex for the same amount that you would have spent on any of those PVC items like Catherine Courtney or like the really good lip service stuff back in the day. You can still get those things, or not those things, but you can still get a nice hot piece of leather or even latex for around the same price off of eBay or Amazon. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, expensive. You don't have to break the bank, so remember that. One of the first things that I did, and this is something else coming from me, I didn't so much invest in my physique as much as I invested in getting a few toys and getting, you know, some cute clothes. And once I started making more money, I mean, I still, you know, like kept myself in shape. I monitored my diet. I was still active, but not going to the gym and hiring a personal trainer. That actually didn't come along until I started making a steady income that I can, you know, spend money on appearances. So if it means forfeiting your yoga classes or your Pilates classes or even your gym membership, do it for a short period of time. And then with that money, buy a few articles of clothing or, you know, a few toys, and you could still jog. You could still do, you know, at home workouts. You could still do a lot of the things that you could do in a gym or with a personal trainer or in yoga class. You could still do those things at home and be healthy. So don't, you know, think that you need to give up your health and fitness in order to, you know, be, you know, have a good start as a dominatrix. Investing in toys was a very important thing for me, because having my own toys and not using toys that were already sitting around in the dungeon gave me a bigger sense of power and independence. Made me realize, like, this is mine and no one else's, and I'm going to use this and nobody else is using it, and this is great. I mean, if I felt like lending it out, sure, but it just made me feel good that it was mine. And when you do have more things that are of your own, you'll understand more that it gives you kind of like a sense of much more sense of power. It's kind of like moving out of your parents' house, you know, for the first time, you know, and getting your first apartment. You know, it's like, oh, wow, or your first car, or whatever, you know, like, it's those things that kind of like, you know, it's in the same vein, you know, it really is. So having your own things, even if they're not anything crazy, and you can still, there's some places that charge an arm and a leg for a toy, and then there's some places that, you know, you could get a high quality toy that's not made out of like fake leather and plastic and the cheap crap. You could still buy them at stores. You just have to know where to look. And trust me, if you ask around, you'll get plenty of great advice from people. They're not going to withhold advice. One of the other things that I found out the hard way when I first started out as a dominatrix when I was younger was that you're not going to get a whole lot of support. You think you're going to have some great mentor and that you're going to learn the ropes from someone, 2, 3 people or something like that, and you'll have a great support system in regards to learning, but you're actually really not. In regards to a lot of houses of domination, you get, you know, from what I noticed all across the board is that you get very minimal training. It's more about, you know, how big the staff is and how many options are available than it is actually the actual, like, you know, quality and skill set of the Dom. And as much as I hate to say this, it's true. So every woman for herself, unless you are extraordinarily gifted at kissing people's asses, and even then it's kind of tough because, you know, a lot of the really skilled Doms are not going to take you under their wing for one reason and one reason only. Because there's a million other girls right before you that wanted to learn the ropes and wanted to learn how, you know, to be a skilled Dom, wanted to learn how to do this, this or that, and then all of a sudden, poof, 2 months they're gone. And it's like, wow. And this has happened to me too. You know, I had taken a number of people under my wing, and I'd say maybe 2 or 3 out of those people actually made it. You know, out of the, I can't even count how many. And it's like whenever I have somebody that comes to me saying, hey, I would love for you to train me, I'm like, you're going to have to pay for my training, which is, you know, it's not to be snobby, but it's like, how serious are you? So a lot of, you know, esteemed, you know, Doms out there, they will only give you training if you're already kind of established and they see that you're motivated. It's like, okay, this person is actually seriously putting the footwork in. You know, like they are really diligent and dedicated to becoming a, you know, good, successful pro Dom and not just playing around. And usually that actually takes time, so you're kind of floating around like, you know, like, when am I going to learn? I had 0 mentors, 0. I had not a single mentor. I had a few really highly skilled and esteemed Doms along the way teach me a few things that I asked, you know, like, hey, can you show me how to do this? And they did, but I never had a mentor. As a matter of fact, my greatest teachers were my slaves. I'd actually take the initiative and be like, you know, especially if it was a regular, hey, I'm just learning how to do this. Mind if, you know, I use you as a guinea pig? You know, I'll try not to hurt you, or I'll try not to mess up, but to be honest, I'm still learning, so mind if I just, you know, practice? And actually, I had a good number of guys that were totally fine with it. If anything, they kind of felt a little honored to be used as a guinea pig. You know, not everybody's going to agree with it, but hey, when you have no other choice, you gotta, you know, do whatever it takes. And I did whatever it takes, and whatever it took. Another thing in regards to, you know, like, I'd say putting yourself out there. Now, I gotta say, it was interesting when I first started out because I came from Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, when I first started out, and in a number of the years following, was known to have some of the best Doms in the entire country. Pennsylvania, as a whole, was known for the most highly skilled, over-the-top, good-looking Doms, and each and every one of us was so very different that anybody that was visiting was like, they'd look around and they'd be like, I don't even know who I want to serve because all of these women are so skilled, so over the top, so beautiful. You know, you'd go to bigger cities like, say, Los Angeles or New York, and you could get a dominatrix that could give you an excellent scene, dressed from head to toe in latex or leather, give you a good corporal scene, give you a good, you know, like sensual scene or a good medical scene or whatever. But there were very few that really, really stood out, you know, that kind of like separated themselves from the flock. It was pretty uniform. Same could be said about Los Angeles. But you go to Philadelphia or Pennsylvania in general, and it was like, wow, if I really want to push the envelope, if I, you know, say I'm a slave, which would never happen, if I really wanted to push the envelope and have a really incredible, out there, wild experience with somebody that was like so extraordinarily skilled, you know, like I'll go to Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh as well, you know, it was, those were the places. And now it's not so much like that anymore. A lot of the Doms left the scene, moved away, you know. And my point for saying that is, I had a lot of inspiration. I didn't necessarily look at those women as competition. As a matter of fact, it was kind of like when you're surrounded by skill and beauty and like creativity and like people that were like out of the norm in regards to the scene that you're in. It's kind of, you know, you have to set a higher standard for yourself. You can't just be a lazy dom. I know, like, you know, if I wanted to be a lazy dom, I'd move to some, like, backwoods place where there was hardly any doms. You know, like, for instance, and there were some incredible doms that came out of this state. I'm not trying to be insulting. There's places like Massachusetts where a mediocre dom who's, you know, just kind of like traditional, nothing particularly spectacular, could be like the biggest fish in the pond, you know, and do like over the top well. In a place like Massachusetts, they wouldn't make it in a place like Philadelphia. And, you know, it's so important to have your skills match your appearance. And, you know, some people are like, oh, well, you know, I could bring them in with this hot outfit that I'm wearing. Yeah, you'll bring them in, and then they'll never come back. Trust me, there was a dom in Philadelphia at one point who had an appearance that guys were flocking to her in droves. I mean, there was a point where she was just, like, up to her gills with, you know, people wanting to see her, and then all of a sudden, poof, she stopped. She stopped getting so many, you know, people wanting to see her. You know, you think like, why? She was so incredibly beautiful. She was like the epitome of what somebody would fantasize about when fantasizing about a dominatrix. I can't imagine why. Maybe it was because her sessions sucked and she was extraordinarily mediocre, and I'm not saying who this is, but anybody that has served this person probably knows who I'm talking about. But anyway, and to be honest, there's some people that will see us based on our appearance or, you know, our skill or whatever, and we just don't vibe with them, and that's perfectly fine. You're not going to win everybody, you know. Like, there's people that have come to see me because of, you know, for one reason or another, and the session fell flat. It happens. It's natural. So making sure that your skills match your appearance. And my last bit of advice for, you know, a new pro dom starting out is to have professional studio pictures. You know, it's very important to have those. I know it's kind of nice to have somebody just grab their camera, taking pictures of you in the dungeon or whatever, but when you part with a little bit of cash to get some pro pictures, that also helps as well. It shows that you're serious and you're willing to invest. And that's the thing that a lot of really sincere players like to see, is they like to see somebody that is in it for the long haul. You know, like I was saying before, maybe not in this video, but elsewhere, you know, I didn't do a fraction of as well when I first started out as I do now, and there's a reason for that. So remember what I said. Be inspired. Invest in your appearance. Invest in your skill. There's a lot of things, you know, and don't make excuses. You might want to make excuses. Well, anybody could, you know, they should serve me wearing, you know, with me wearing anything, you know. Anybody would want to serve me. Look at the way I look. I'm hot, you know, I'm dominant. It's like, yeah, how many more are out there like just like you? You have to set yourself apart. And you don't want to be so extremely different that you're looked at as kind of weird. Like, okay, this person's trying too hard. It's okay. And I gotta say, even though I am known to be a more hardcore dominatrix, you know, more like out there, if you don't have that kind of like hardcore streak in you, don't think that like, you know, there's not a huge calling for women that are like, you know, extraordinarily sensual and sexy, that use their sexual power to control men. Because if anything, there are more out there that really enjoy that. You know, like, there's a lot of guys that really like that kind of like girl next door that looks like a dominatrix in the dungeon. Like, wow, this person could be my, you know, wife, or, you know, my next door neighbor or whatever. You know, like, I have a specific look and stuff like that because it's me, it's who I am, and the kind of sessions that I do are a reflection of who I am as a person. So if you're looking for these extreme scenes, and you know, in your normal life, you notice like you're not the most extreme person, well, there's a reason for that, because who you are as a Dom and how successful you are, you know, it's right in the same line as like who you are, you know, in your normal life. It's kind of like it's connected. It's very connected. So, you know, you're just going to come off as being a little too like off or goofy, you know, if you try to be something that you're not. So don't worry about, you know, not doing things perfectly or not being everything to everyone. Just kind of go with who you really are. And I've said this before. So I hope that I have been helpful with this nice 20-something minute freaking, you know, tutorial that I've given everyone. And I gotta say, ladies, good luck.